In today's video, we're looking at Ja'Cory Brooks, wide receiver out of Louisville. What are his strengths and weaknesses? What do we think he's going to be utilized at the next level? Where do we think he's going to be drafted? And most importantly, what's he do for us in fantasy? If you watch to the end of this video, you'll have a good idea. As far as Ja'Cory Brooks' height and weight go, he's give or take 6'3", 195 pounds. He's currently 23 years old, but will be 24 during his rookie season, about halfway through it. As far as his production goes, he's had a little bit of a bumpy ride. So he was a 3-year player at Alabama where he had an interesting sophomore season, but he kind of fizzled out and he transferred for his senior season to Louisville. So in his true freshman season, Alabama, granted, is pretty notorious about not letting their freshman players on the field, especially under Nick Saban. So it is kind of impressive that he had any stats at all. So 192 yards and 2 touchdowns as a true freshman at Alabama. Pretty impressive. He really stepped it up as a sophomore, though. 674 yards and 8 touchdowns in a pretty stacked wide receiver class for Alabama, at least. Then as a junior, he kind of took a big dip in production. He only had 30 yards and 0 touchdowns. So that led to him transferring to Louisville for more playing time, I assume. And in his senior season, he had over 1,000 yards, 1,013 to be exact, and 9 touchdowns. So he definitely went to a new scenery and showed out at Louisville for sure. So we'd rather a consistent growth, but his was a little more up and down. But it is what it is. Looking at some advanced stats here, we looked at all draft-eligible FBS wide receivers with at least 50 targets, which came out to about 147 players in our sample size. So we want to see how he stacked up against all those players. So Brooks ran 394 routes, which was 95.2% of his team's routes, which is good. We want our prospects to be on the field a lot, which he was. Obviously, we don't want our prospects off the field very much as far as fantasy production goes. Now, as far as his slot snap percentage and out wide snap percentage, that's kind of a red flag for me. You see that he was out wide 89.1% of the time, which means he is pretty much a linear vertical X receiver. I don't see him playing slot or even Z really at the next level. So if you look at draft data, fantasy data as well, over the past 10 years, any receiver drafted that fits this vertical X category where they don't really do slot or Z, they have the worst fantasy production. Obviously, there's outliers like DK Metcalf and stuff, but normally they do not produce very well. So as far as yards per route run, he had 2.57, which is good for 21st in the sample size, which is okay. PFF receiving grade, 79.9, was good for 27th, which is also decent. Yak per reception was 6 per reception, tied for 49th in the sample size. He's a jump ball receiver, so don't expect a lot of yak, really. He is a little wiggly, though. For how slow he is, he's really slow. We'll get to that later in the grading, but he's really slow. But he has got a little wiggle to him to where he's making guys miss from time to time. So you can expect that at the next level if he gets on the field. As far as missed tackles forced, he had 7, which was tied for 87th in the sample size. He's not really a make you miss type of guy consistently. He can do that from time to time, but it's not his game for sure. Now, where he shines, his contested catch percentage of 69.6 might be the highest that I've seen of any player thus far that I've graded. So, and he's got a good bit of volume. He's had 23 contested catch targets, and 16 of those were catches, which is really, really good. Normally, you want your receivers to be in that 50 to 55% range at the minimum for you to consider somebody good at the catch point. He is definitely that. He's way above that, so he's definitely one of those 70-30 jump ball receivers where the quarterback will have a good confidence that the receiver will come down with it. Now, as far as targets and receptions per game, he had 7.75 targets a game and 5.08 receptions a game, which is pretty solid. It's not a bunch, but it is solid work, solid volume that he did translate, as you can see, to over 1,000 yards. So we do like that. And as far as his touchdowns per game goes, it was 0.75. 9 touchdowns on the year is definitely nothing to write home about, but he did get some wild, wild touchdown grabs on film specifically, where, I mean, he had some spectacular grabs this year. So, as far as these advanced stats go, he's definitely nothing to write home about, but he can show you some jump ball ability from time to time. Now, as far as some more advanced stats, specifically against man and zone coverages, his PFF grade versus man was 79.7, which was good for 24th, and yards per route run versus man was 3.29, which was 15th. So I was kind of surprised by that because I didn't really see much separation at all on any of his routes, really. I just thought that he possessed jump ball ability and contested catch ability to where they didn't care if he got separation or not. He just jumped up and got it. So I am surprised that these numbers are even that high. Obviously, they show up more so on his grades versus zone, which was 72.9, which is good for 50th. And yards per route run versus zone was 2.26, which was 47th. So obviously, he was not good at all against zone for the most part. And his PFF grade versus screens, was 65.7. He had, I think, 6 screenplays, so it's not really big enough sample size for me to actually judge him based on that. And then his PFF grade in the slot was 77.9. As I said, he didn't run many routes in the slot, but he didn't really look particularly good there either. And then first downs caught was 44, good for 26 in the sample size. So you can see here that even PFF's not really high on this guy. So let's see what the grades look like. So Ja'Corey Brooks, wide receiver out of Louisville, he's 6'3", 195 pounds. He is a true senior, and my evaluation of him is an undrafted free agent. Yes, the first one on the channel that we value as an undrafted free agent. As a high comp, and I do believe this comp is very unlikely to hit because of all of the obstacles he's going to have to overcome to become this, is Allen Lazard. Now, I do think Allen Lazard is a better athlete, but he does have similar skills as far as jump ball ability and things like that. And if Ja'Corey Brooks does land with a team where the quarterback trusts him, like in Rodgers and Lazard situation, he could get some touchdown volumes and some big catches in a week-to-week basis. Definitely a boom or bust type of receiver at his ceiling. And then his floor is like a Laquan Treadwell, if not worse than that. I know Laquan Treadwell was once a promising prospect before he got hurt at Ole Miss, but I'm talking about post-injury Laquan Treadwell. He could be that bad, maybe even worse. I mean, we saw a lot of bad things on film, which leads us to our official grade. Yes, that's not a typo. He got a 58.5 out of 100, which is a poor grade. So, let's get into what we saw. So, as far as the route running is concerned, his short routes, as far as hitches and shallow crosses, we thought were pretty solid. He's not a very fast athlete at all. He might run in the low 4.6s, even 4.7s at the combine. So we did see that none of his routes were particularly fast, which puts a ceiling on any of his scores, really. So I did like that he could get open on shallow crosses. So that's why we gave him 3 out of 5. As far as his medium route goes, he ran a few digs, a couple slants, things of that nature, but he never really got much separation. We saw drops as well, some drops that even led to turnovers. So that's why we gave him a 2.5 out of 5, and he really didn't get any separation there. And then as far as deep routes are concerned, outside of the blown coverages that he got from time to time, um, we didn't see much separation at all. But it didn't really matter for him because he could just go up and catch the football with a guy right on top of him. So that's why we gave him a 3 out of 5. At least he gets the routes done. As far as double moves are concerned, we saw a few on film. They were effective when he used them, but he did not use them a lot from what we saw. So that's why we gave him a 3 out of 5. As far as releases are concerned, he showed some stutter step kind of fast and slow types of releases where he could trick the defender into thinking that he was going for that shallow cross, but instead, or the hitch even, and then move upfield for a go. And he's going to have to rely on this type of trickery to get any sort of separation at all because he is not fast enough, in my opinion, to get any sort of separation, especially at the NFL level. If he's not getting separation in college, especially at Louisville, no offense to Louisville fans, but they're not playing the greatest of competition every year, and he's still not getting any separation. So that's why we give him a 3 out of 5. He does use them. They are effective. It's inconsistent. As far as speed goes, like I said earlier, he's going to be a low 4.6 to maybe even 4.7 guy. I'd be shocked if he ran a 4.5. So this speed score could even be lower, just based on how we've graded other prospects in the past. We thought a 6 was fair here. So acceleration, I will say once he gets going in a straight line or, going downfield, he does get slightly faster, but not by much. That's why his acceleration, it takes him a long time to get going. That's why we gave him a 6 out of 10 there as well. Now, as far as deceleration goes, we saw his snap downs and cuts in and out of his routes. The cuts in and out of his routes were kind of weak, but his snap down as far as hitches and stuff goes, and his ability to stop on a dime and make defenders miss from time to time was kind of impressive, especially for his size at 6'3". That's why we give him a 3 out of 5 there. As far as agility, 3.5 out of 5. I think that's one of his better attributes as far as an athlete. Once he gets the ball in his hands, he does try to make some wiggle, elusive moves to make people miss. It doesn't work all the time, but we were surprised on film with how often that he was able to make people miss with his it was very slow and wonky looking, but it still worked. That's why we gave him a 3.5 out of 5. Change of direction, that was one of the things that really didn't stand out for me when we were watching film. Was he just really didn't get moving as far as like cutting in and out. That's why his, the cutting in and out of his routes was a problem for me as well. So that's why we give him a 2.5 out of 5. Now, as far as catching's concerned, I don't have a problem with his catching outside of the boneheaded concentration drops from time to time. It just seems like when the lights are brightest and he needs to make a catch, he's making the catch. That's why we give him a 4 out of 5. In his catch and traffic ability at a 4 out of 5 as well is something that definitely sticks out. If you look up Ja'Corey Brooks highlights, that's what you're going to see is crazy jump balls where he has no business catching them, but for some reason he comes down with them anyways. Run after catch. That's another thing that we thought was pretty good. He was able to get yak more consistently on these when he gets in open space, similar to how Jack Besh is. So that was surprising as well. Dog factor, 2.5 out of 5. There's a reason for this. He did not show any effort, in my opinion. Whenever it came to him not being targeted, you could tell when it was a run play because he just kind of jogged around. I could be wrong in this, but we both saw it. I mean, he just jogged around whenever there was a run play. He didn't really run block really well, even though he's kind of a bigger 6'3" frame. I mean, that's why we gave him a 2.5 out of 5. As far as analytics, like we said, it was nothing crazy outside of his one season in Alabama where he produced, 8 touchdowns, and then the season here at Louisville. He hasn't had anything outside of that, so that's why we give him a 5 out of 10 there. Projected draft capital, He is projected a 7th round pick. I don't know if he gets drafted in all honesty, but if he does, he will go in that 6th to 7th round. I'm leaning more so 7th, so that's why we gave him a 1 out of 5. And his XZ slot ability, we did see him in the slot a little bit, but I think he'll have more versatility as the X or the Z. I think at the next level, he's strictly a X receiver. And moving on to his worries and limitations, I think he's very slow for the NFL. Very slow. I don't think he's going to get any separation at the NFL level either. I've heard some off the field issues as well could kind of get in the way of his draft stock. Effort, especially on running plays and plays where he knows he's not getting targeted. Those are all big red flags for me, and I will not be even considering him on my dynasty rosters for any reason. So, how does Ja'Cory Brooks stack up against the other wide receivers of the 2025 class? Well, I'll tell you, we've graded a lot more receivers than you'll see in front of you. We're just waiting on getting these videos out. But I will tell you, Ja'Cory Brooks is by far the worst prospect that we've looked at the receiver position. I don't know if there's going to be a wide receiver prospect that gets drafted that I will like less than him. So, with all that being said, he's down there in a tier of his own, unfortunately, at a 58.5. I don't know if anybody else gets close to beating his record as the worst wide receiver we've ever graded, at least in this class. I wanted to give a shout out to all of our Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mazjack, and Infamy MTG for supporting the channel. If you want to join the Patreon community yourself, you gain access to a lot of cool things, like the Discord server where we talk about fantasy football and real life football. You can see things like private live streams. You can even request private videos as well that we will do specifically for you. You'll get access to videos a day before they get posted on YouTube as well. And one last thing, I want to apologize to Ja'Cory Brooks, who I know I have flamed severely in this video. I hope that your NFL career is amazing. Just from what I've seen on film, I don't believe that will happen. So apologies there. And one last thing, thank you guys for watching the video. Please like, subscribe, and comment. It helps out with the algorithm a lot. And I hope all of you guys have a fantastic day.